And the interesting thing, I don't know, there is a book which is called The Scientific Revolutions, I think. Um, it is
You're
called.
talking about Kuhn.
Yes, Kuhn is the author, yes.
Yeah, that's a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions.
Correct, Structure of Scientific Revolutions, that's true.
And that was first published in 1962, and it has a second edition in 1970. But that's where the notion of paradigm got legs and started to get traction. It's pretty interesting. It's a nice model. It's also been roundly criticized as ambiguous in its terminology, but it's a pretty powerful argument. And his argument was primarily regarding the revolutions in the natural sciences.
Yes,
but it also works in the social sciences. It also works in art. It also works. It's a nice model that talks about how scientific revolutions come to pass. But it would also work, for example, in your model of going from a red to a green world, to going from this world to that world. There are analogs to it that are pretty powerful.
yes.
I'd like to point out, just as an anecdote, he spent a lot of his time at Princeton.
Okay.
No, he wasn't at the Pear Lab. This is the part of the anecdote. Bob John, who was the director of the Pear Lab and recently passed, but Bob John told me that he knew Kuhn, pretty well, and Kuhn wouldn't send students over to the Pear Lab because he was afraid of data that would contradict his own ideas.
Oh my God, really?
And you'd expect of anybody who would be open to new ideas, this would be it. And he said no. He was afraid. He wouldn't send anybody over, and Bob was not permitted to send students to him for advice.
That is interesting. So you have someone who actually describes a box and talks about a box and writes about a box, but himself not being brave enough to basically move out of his own box.
No, don't touch my box.
I think we have to learn a lot, right? I think there is a lot which we all have to learn, and probably there is even a kind of an inner kind of protective mechanism going on here, right?
Yeah.
I think it is if you put your box at risk. I mean, what you do is you expose your box. You declare this is just a box, and that box might fall apart. And when the box falls apart, I mean, I'm just thinking like, then you are naked, right? I mean, you're just standing there without a home.
Yep. And it's apparently pretty rare that people can do that. I found I can get into that system pretty easily because I've done so much basic research and just gathering raw data on healing and connections between people and all those things. And the reality is, if I look at the aggregate of all the data I've gathered, I realize I don't really know anything at all. And for whatever crazy psychological warped feeling I come to, I'm okay with that. And I'm comfortable knowing that I don't know anything.
Yeah.
And that, but see, the interesting thing could be a box.
Could be a box.
Yeah. So my box is a box that says, don't worry about it.
I'm sitting in a box which says there are no boxes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so I'm probably boxed in with the illusion that I freed myself from belief, but my belief is that all beliefs are wrong. Even the belief that all beliefs are wrong is wrong. And that's probably wrong.
But we might be right with that assumption.
Probably not.
All right, this can go on forever.
Yeah, it could. But I don't know a lot of people who are comfortable with that because they want to read the textbooks and think that they're real. They want a simple explanation of the way the world works. They want to think that E equals MC squared and we're done. And E doesn't equal MC squared. There's other things and other ways and other formulas, and there's other ways to look at the world. And so said Einstein. And so he was the critic of himself.
Yeah, but to most people, to most believers, this is then heresy, right? I mean, you cannot sort of touch things which have been declared as or accepted at least in mainstream as given.
I saw a letter written in Einstein's own hand questioning his relativity theory and thinking that it's likely wrong. And it was written to a friend of his, and he said he's been put into a bizarre position that he, who used to take pride in questioning all authority, has become the world's authority, and he can't even question himself. So he has to critique his own work privately and to a small group of friends because he wasn't tied into his pronouncements.
Yes. Yes. Which basically proves, or it shows how deeply rooted that concept of I'm in a box and I can't even challenge my box, right? I'm not even allowed to challenge my own box, the box which I've created. I'm just asking myself what purpose that mechanism fulfills, and what pops up intuitively. I think it's a protective mechanism.
Yeah, I want safety.
Yeah, it's safety.
I mean, I get safety by a rigid religious belief. I get safety by a rigid scientific belief. I get safety by any belief that I really attach to. There's a chemist by the name of Michael Polanyi who spoke of that you reside in a scientific theory and you actually embody it. You take it in so deeply that you don't, in the terms we're talking about here, you don't recognize the boxes that you have. And it becomes a visceral response. So, and you, like any biological system, you protect it. You look for homeostasis. You don't want it disrupted. Yes. You're seeking that safety and that consistency and the illusion of certainty.
Yes.
There's a guy who alleges to have achieved enlightenment by using intellectual means, and his intellectual means of doing enlightenment is to say, ask anything or say anything that's true, and then question it. And so most people go to Descartes, and they'll start with, "I think, therefore I am," and he'll respond by going, "So you've established that there's something like an I?" How did you? And people don't, they're startled by that. So he even questions the cogito. And that's the most basic statement that's ever been uttered, I think, philosophically. And this guy comes along and says, but it's based on a series of assumptions.
Yes.
There's an I, there's thinking, therefore, you see there's a sequence, and you can dissect the cogito, and then you're left just sitting there staring into space, and not knowing what to do. And so where do you stop? Where do you draw the line? And in your terms, you have this material world, this red world, and you want to switch it to a green world, and the green world makes more sense. I mean, the green world does make more sense. It clearly makes more sense. It's a working model in which to live and function.
Yes.
Now, will there eventually be a different color world? Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
But the red world is dead. The red world is dead. It's dying. It's dead. Good luck to you. It's time to move on.
Yes, but that is such a radical statement for a lot of people, right? I mean, they don't recognize that there is an alternative to the red worldview, right? I mean, they just think there is one world, one model, because they don't reflect about that. So that is the first thing. So they don't acknowledge that they are sitting in a box and that there are alternative boxes there, right? So it's a very radical statement to say, well, actually, by the way, the box in which you're sitting, where you're not even aware that you're sitting in the box, that box is wrong. That box is dead.
Yeah.
And probably it is even like that red box is a little box which actually could exist in the bigger green box, right? Probably like that. And then we don't know what's outside the green box, right? I mean, if there is an outside, if there is not, whatever. I mean, but I think if we acknowledge that there is a progression in terms of our interpretation of what reality really is, and probably it is even a desire for us, for human beings, to have an understanding, or to at least strive to understand. I mean, I would put myself first in line if you need evidence for the species wanting to understand. I mean, I just want to understand. I love to have an explanation for what's going on, and I love to basically see that the model which I have in mind is actually seems to at least explain a lot of what we have as evidence, right? So I'm certainly representative of that group who wants to understand, and probably this is I don't know whether this is a false desire, but I'm an addict to that, right? I mean, I try to make sense out of the reality that I'm experiencing.
Yep. Not many people do, because we live on faith. We live on faith all the way through our lives. So when we're little kids, we have faith in our parents that what they're telling you is true. When you go to school, you're learning stuff. The stuff you have faith is true, and all of society reinforces that. Listen to them, listen to your teachers, listen to. When you get to university, in many departments, in many programs, here's learn this, learn this, learn this. And it's simply given as given. There's very little questioning of it. And the interesting part is, my experience is there's even very little question in departments of philosophy.
Yes, where actually philosophy is the desire to have wisdom, right? I mean Yeah.
So you call it a radical thing to say that you're in a box and that there are other boxes. It doesn't occur to me that that's radical, because I think this is as liberating.
Oh yes, I'm absolutely with you. I think once you actually start asking yourself those questions, once you start challenging your own box, I mean, once you have identified that you're sitting in a box and you start challenging your own box, this is absolutely liberating.
Yeah, it's just, oh boy, I don't need to spend all my time and all my energy defending beliefs.
Oh yeah.
I'm free. Let's find out what I can find out. And then let's play with it. Let's release from attachment to any particular idea or any particular belief.
Yeah.
And it's liberating to just really start with the assumption you don't really know what you're talking about.
No. And you open up, I mean, this is like Heisenberg, right? I mean, this is like you open up a whole field of potentiality, right? I mean, you all of a sudden, because you're not constraining yourself, you take off your little box glasses and your little box filter, right? And all of a sudden you have got this whole field of potentiality, right? Which is huge to be explored. And from that point of view, if you then look at all of those different options that all of a sudden seem to be available, you can also find a lot of keys, a lot of solutions to problems which you encounter when you are still sitting in your little box, right? Or you would probably actually say that a lot of the problems that you actually perceive are problems which do exist because we are sitting in the box.
Yep.
So,
and the red world is dead, my friend. It's dead. It's just dying slowly.
Yes.
And the life force is taken out of it, and it's withering.
And this is to me,
the more it withers, like a declining empire,
yes,
the more vicious will be the attacks by those in that box.
Yeah, because they want to desperately defend that box, right? They want to desperately defend the empire.
My world, my empire, my belief system, my religion, my gods, my everything, it's all going away.
Mm.
And you don't have a clear idea where it's going. And if you take this as a belief system, well, if you're alive in the time when the gods were Apollo and Zeus and all those folks, well, they died, but they didn't die quick. They died slowly and violently.
Mm. Yes.
And the Zeus people are gone, but they went down fighting.
Yes.
The red world people are dying, but they're going to go down fighting.
Yeah, they will go down fighting. You see, this is a profound conversation, I think. To me, it's a profound conversation as I'm now questioning, really, I mean, is it worth a fight? I mean, do we want to fight? I mean, this is, you see, I don't want to end up fighting against red worldview believers, because that is not what.
No point.
I mean, this is like, if we would see, okay, there is now a red worldview team and it has its own kind of belief system, and then we create, for whatever reason, a kind of green worldview team, and then they start battling. I mean, that would be wrong. I mean, that would just, in the best case, you would replace a red worldview belief system by a green worldview belief system, but you would just replace one belief system by the other.
Yep. Now, Kuhn, who we were referring to earlier,
yes,
suggests, at least in scientific revolutions, that's the only way a revolution can happen.
Yes.
Meaning, if I've got my worldview, I've got my, which we'll call a theoretical model, or bigger than a theory, he would call it a paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And the paradigm starts to lose steam because it doesn't make any sense. And we have scientific anomalies building up that don't make any sense. Yes. There still won't be a revolution.
Yes.
And the only way there can be a revolution is if you offer an alternative.
Yes.
So the idea of going from red to green has to be there, because you can't just have the red collapse. The example among Kuhn's examples are in astronomy. You know, these are infamous examples, but you have, for example, the Earth is the center of the universe.
Yes.
Now, it's obvious the Earth is the center of the universe. I mean, it really is. If you get up in the morning and you go outside and you watch a sunrise and then you stare long enough at the sun, you know, two things happen. One, you go blind, but the second thing that happens is you watch the sun go around.
Yes.
And the sun goes around the Earth. That's what you watch.
Yes. And
then it comes back up on the other side. Now, it's pretty obvious that the sun is going around the Earth, and our language says that: sunrise, sunset. And then you watch the moon go around, and then at night you watch the twinkly things go around, and everything goes around the Earth. You know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that the Earth is the center of the universe. So Ptolemy creates a beautiful model of the Earth as the center of the universe, and it lasts 2,000 years. It should last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
It's obviously true. The Earth is, and you don't have to believe me, you can go out and observe it for yourself. Now, if you say that to someone in 2018, that the Earth is the center of the universe, and you say, don't believe me, go out and check for yourself, all your observations will indicate that the Earth is the center of the universe, they get very confused. Because people aren't used to challenging or looking for their own data, and say they're used to instead believing something.
Yes. And
And so they have been taught that the Earth is not the center of the universe.
yeah.
They've been taught otherwise. And that will correspond, it doesn't correspond to their own observations if they go out and systematically look. If you go out and systematically look, the Earth is the center of the universe.
Yes.
When someone comes up with something that's weird, Galileo looks up at the sky and goes, well, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense, that doesn't make sense, stuff doesn't make sense. You throw him in jail. You should, because he's taken that view, that world, that whatever color it is, and just throwing in things that don't make sense. You need Copernicus, who incidentally was wrong, but you need Copernicus to come up with a different worldview, a different model. And then people will say, if there hits a critical mass of things that don't make sense in the old view, you're still not going to convert, because you need to convert to something.
Yeah.
You can't be without a box. You can't be without a model.
Yes.
You can't be without a metaphysical system. You can't be without the God. You can't be without something that takes this noise and turns it into a coherent narrative. You need the narrative. So the question is, in our terms, is the green view sufficiently narrated that it can make sense to people?
Yes.
Not that the green view is true,
yeah,
but that it is clearly superior to the red view.
Yes. Yes. And this is how far I got, right? I mean, with my own little kind of whatever I don't even want to call it a research, but when I was diving into all of those different disciplines and trying to make sense out of what the world really is, I mean, I'm not saying that the green worldview is the ultimate explanation. I'm just saying it is probably an advanced kind of model which can explain all that the red worldview can explain, plus a lot of those anomalies that you were talking about, right? All of those weird, or not all, but a lot of those weird phenomena, which are not explainable in the red worldview. And I think this is probably just a progression, right? I mean, it's just a lot of, okay, we are making progress in our understanding, and I somehow like what you said. You need to have something to converge towards. You need to have a next box. Basically, you can't just dissolve one box or discard one box without having another box.
Yep.
Right? And this narrative which describes the other box needs to be sufficient, so that the people who sit in the old box, in this case, let's call it the red again, those people who sit in the old box need to at least have a new home or a prospective new home, green box, where they can say, okay, now I see this and I need to learn about this new home. I need to sort of walk there and sort of walk around and see whether I can feel familiar in this new box, right? And only if they can feel familiar in this new box, they probably make this transition from moving out of the red box into the green box, and then accepting for themselves, believing, again, it's just a belief system, that the green box is probably a slightly better model of reality than the red one, that the red worldview boxes. So it is not bad. You say it's actually a necessity to have a different model to allow people to convert towards, right? I mean, they need to have
I need a framework.
Yeah, they need a framework, yes. Yes.
And the framework has to be explanatory of the things that otherwise don't make sense. So Copernicus comes along and has a sun-centered universe, because the universe was the solar system, basically, at the time, and the sun-centered universe, and you move from an earth-centered to a sun-centered by incorporating the old data plus the stuff that didn't make sense. And if you look at Copernicus, it suddenly makes sense. But you're going to still have people kicking and screaming on the way down. I mean, God said that the earth is the center of the universe, and God should be pretty good in astronomy, and if God doesn't get the astronomy right, these are some serious challenges.
Yes. Yes.
Now, Copernicus was wrong too. And when Einstein did his stuff, the Milky Way galaxy was thought to be the entire universe.
Yes.
You didn't know there were other universes.
Yeah.
And now there's 1 trillion galaxies.
Yes.
And there'll be more. There'll probably end up being 1 trillion universes.